The judge was halfway through reading the sentence when Malik Davis cut him off. Everyone in that courtroom thought this was over. The jury had found him guilty. The public defender looked bored. The prosecutor was already packing up. Judge Harold Klein, white, smug, powerful, leaned back with a smirk like he was sending another statistic away for 20 years. But Malik wasn't finished. He stood up, calm but furious. "Your Honor," he said, his voice cutting through the stale air. "Before you sentence me for something I didn't do, maybe you should explain why the evidence doesn't add up." The courtroom went dead silent, and what he said next exposed a lie so big it made the courtroom explode. 3 months earlier, Malik Davis was just another 19-year-old trying to make something of himself. Quiet, reserved, the kind of kid who kept his head down and his grades up. His father had been a defense attorney before cancer took him 2 years ago. His mother, Teresa, taught 3rd grade at Roosevelt Elementary and worked weekends at the church food bank. Malik was walking home from his internship at TechFix, a small computer repair shop downtown. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. He knew the exact time because he just checked his phone to see if his girlfriend Maya had texted back. The gray hoodie was his father's, too big, comfortable, with Howard University law faded across the chest. He wore it everywhere, especially when he missed his dad the most. He was 3 blocks from home when the sirens started wailing. Police cars swarmed Maple Street like wasps on spilled soda. Malik pulled out his earbuds, watching officers jump out. Hands on their weapons, eyes scanning the crowd of people who'd stopped to stare. A nearby house had been broken into. Someone had called 911, reporting a tall black guy in a gray hoodie running from the scene. Malik was tall. Malik was black. Malik was wearing a gray hoodie. But Malik had been across town fixing Mrs. Patterson's laptop for the past 3 hours. "Hey, you!" Officer Martinez pointed directly at him. "Stop right there!" Malik's hands went up instinctively. "What's going on?" "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "Wait, what? I didn't do anything. I was just walking home from—" The handcuffs bit into his wrists before he could finish the sentence. His face hit the concrete. Someone's knee pressed into his back. "Check my GPS," he kept saying as they dragged him to the patrol car. "Check my work schedule. Call TechFix. I was across town." No one listened. They processed him like meat through a grinder. Photos, fingerprints, charges, burglary in the 1st degree, assault on a police officer for allegedly resisting arrest. The assault charge came from when he'd instinctively pulled his arm away as the cuffs went on. 3 seconds of confusion became felony resistance. His mother arrived at the station at 11 p.m., eyes red from crying, clutching the family's last $2,000 for bail. She couldn't afford a real lawyer. The court appointed him a public defender named Janet Morrison, overworked, underpaid, already looking defeated before she even opened his file. "The evidence is circumstantial," she told him during their 10-minute meeting, "but eyewitness testimony is powerful. We should consider a plea deal." "I wasn't there," Malik said. "I believe you," she replied. But believing you and proving it are 2 different things. That night, in his cell, Malik remembered everything his father had taught him about the law, how evidence worked, how witnesses could be wrong, how the system was supposed to work, and how it actually worked. His father had always said, "Son, the courtroom isn't about truth. It's about what you can prove, and sometimes you have to prove your innocence louder than they prove your guilt." Judge Harold Klein had been on the bench for 23 years. He was known for 3 things: harsh sentences, impatience with defense attorneys, and a particular disdain for what he called urban excuses. Klein remembered Marcus Davis, Malik's father. It was 7 years ago, during the Henderson murder trial. Marcus had exposed a chain of custody error that got Klein's conviction overturned on appeal. The local newspaper ran a front-page story: "Judge's error free suspected killer." Klein never forgot the humiliation. When he saw Davis on the docket, the old wound reopened. "Another Davis," he muttered to his clerk. "Like father, like son, I suppose." The trial was scheduled fast, too fast. Most burglary cases took months to get to court. Klein moved Malik's case to the front of the line. Janet Morrison, the public defender, barely put up a fight. She was terrified of Klein, who had a reputation for punishing lawyers who wasted his time with frivolous defenses. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Rebecca Walsh, brought what she called a slam dunk case. The evidence was thin, but presented with confidence. A partial blueprint found at the scene, size 11, Nike sole pattern. An eyewitness, Mrs. Henderson, who claimed she saw a tall black male in dark clothing running from her neighbor's house. Officer Martinez's testimony that Malik fit the description perfectly and was acting suspicious when approached. A grainy security camera photo from a gas station 2 blocks away, time-stamped 6:23 p.m., showing someone in a gray hoodie. What the prosecutor didn't mention, Malik wore size 9 Adidas sneakers, not size 11 Nikes. Mrs. Henderson was 78 years old with glaucoma and had been watching TV in a darkened room when she claimed to see the suspect. Officer Martinez's radio logs showed he was responding to a domestic violence call 3 miles away at 6:43 p.m., 4 minutes before he claimed to spot Malik. The security camera timestamp was wrong. The gas station owner would later admit the system had been glitching for weeks, adding random minutes to recordings. But Janet Morrison didn't catch these details. Or maybe she did and didn't think Klein would care. During jury selection, Klein made his bias clear. "This is a simple case," he told potential jurors. "A crime was committed. The defendant was found in the area. The evidence speaks for itself." When Morrison objected to his prejudicial comments, Klein snapped. "Counselor, I've been doing this since before you were born. Don't lecture me about procedure." The trial lasted 2 days. Morrison called one witness, Malik's supervisor at TechFix, who confirmed he'd been at work until 6:30 p.m. But under cross-examination, Walsh got him to admit he couldn't be 100% certain of the exact time Malik left. Malik wanted to testify on his own behalf. Morrison advised against it. "Klein hates young black defendants who talk back," she whispered. "Stay quiet. Let me handle this." But she didn't handle it. She barely cross-examined the witnesses. She didn't challenge the blueprint evidence. She didn't question the timeline. During closing arguments, Walsh painted Malik as a young criminal following in his father's footsteps, a comment that should have triggered a mistrial but went unchallenged. "The defendant thinks he can outsmart the system like his father tried to do," Walsh said. "But justice has a long memory." Klein's eyes lit up at the reference. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the foreman, a middle-aged white man who'd kept staring at Malik throughout the trial, read the verdict with satisfaction. Guilty on all charges. Klein scheduled sentencing for the following week. 20 years was the recommended sentence for first-time burglary with assault. Klein planned to give him 25. That night, Malik sat in his cell with a legal pad and a broken pencil. He started writing down everything that didn't make sense about his case, every timestamp, every inconsistency, every lie. His father had taught him that cases were won in the details, and Klein had missed a lot of details. Sentencing day arrived gray and cold. The courtroom was packed, mostly with reporters who'd heard about the young criminal whose defense attorney father had once embarrassed Judge Klein. Malik sat in his orange jumpsuit, hands folded, while Klein shuffled through papers with theatrical importance. "Mr. Davis," Klein began, his voice dripping with satisfaction, "you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers of burglary in the first degree and assault on a police officer. These are serious crimes that demand serious consequences." He paused for effect, enjoying the moment. "The court sentences you to 25 years in state prison with possibility of parole after, Your Honor." Malik's voice cut through the room like a blade. Klein stopped mid-sentence, looking up with annoyance. "Excuse me? Your Honor, I request permission to address the court before sentencing." Morrison grabbed Malik's arm. "Don't," she whispered. Klein leaned back in his chair, amused. "Oh, by all means, Mr. Davis. Please, enlighten us." Malik stood up slowly. The chains around his ankles clinked as he moved to the podium. "Your Honor, I've spent 3 months listening to people lie about what happened to me. I've watched evidence get ignored and witnesses go unchallenged. I've watched justice turn into theater." The courtroom was dead silent. "But I'm not here to beg for mercy. I'm here to present facts." He pulled out a handwritten motion from his jumpsuit pocket. "Last night, I filed a motion pro se for a new trial, citing judicial bias and prosecutorial misconduct. I'm asking this court to examine evidence that was never presented to the jury. Client's face went red. Mr. Davis, you cannot. Fact 1, Malik continued, his voice steady and clear. Officer Martinez testified that he identified me at 6:43 p.m. on Maple Street, but his radio logs show he was 3 miles away responding to a domestic violence call at that exact time. He couldn't have been in both places. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Fact 2, the prosecution claimed I left a size 11 Nike boot print at the scene. I wear size 9 Adidas sneakers. I've worn the same pair for 2 years. The defense never asked to see my shoes. Morrison was frantically scribbling notes. Fact 3, Mrs. Henderson, the eyewitness, testified she saw me clearly at 6:20 p.m., but the police report shows the sun had set at 6:15 p.m. that day, and Mrs. Henderson's own medical records show advanced glaucoma. How does she see anyone clearly in the dark? Walsh, the prosecutor, was rifling through files, looking panicked. And fact 4, the most important one, Malik pulled out a printed email. The security camera footage that allegedly shows me at 6:23 p.m., I contacted the gas station owner yesterday. He confirmed that his camera system has been malfunctioning for months, randomly adding 20 to 40 minutes to timestamps. The real time of that footage was 5:47 p.m., when I was still at work fixing Mrs. Patterson's laptop. He looked directly at Judge Klein. Mrs. Patterson confirmed this in a sworn affidavit. She's here in the courtroom today. An elderly black woman in the gallery raised her hand. Klein was gripping his gavel so hard his knuckles were white. Furthermore, Malik continued, I've discovered that this court fast-tracked my case, a process usually reserved for plea agreements or cases with overwhelming evidence. My case had neither. The only unusual factor was my last name. He paused, letting that sink in. Your Honor, you presided over a case involving my father 7 years ago, a case where his work led to a conviction being overturned. I believe this court's handling of my case has been influenced by that history. The courtroom exploded into whispers. Reporters were scribbling furiously. Klein banged his gavel. Mr. Davis, you are out of order. No, Your Honor, the system is out of order, and I'm not the only one who knows it. Malik turned to face the jury box, where several former jurors had returned to watch the sentencing. Juror number 7, Mrs. Rodriguez, you've been trying to contact the court for weeks about irregularities in our deliberation. Would you like to speak now? A middle-aged Latina woman stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, she called out, I've been calling your office for 3 weeks. The jury foreman pressured us to convict quickly. He said things about the defendant that weren't based on evidence. I've had doubts about our verdict since the day we made it. Klein was now visibly shaking with rage. This is highly irregular. What's irregular, Malik said, his voice rising, is convicting an innocent man because his father embarrassed you in court 7 years ago. The courtroom erupted. Klein banged his gavel repeatedly. If you're so confident in this conviction, Malik said over the noise, then you shouldn't be afraid of the evidence. Klein called for a recess. As the bailiffs moved to escort Malik back to his cell, his mother stood up in the gallery. Judge Klein, she called out, I have something for the court. She held up a flash drive. Security footage from the train station where my son caught the 6:15 train home from work. Time-stamped and verified. Klein stared at her, his face pale. Court is in recess, he muttered, and fled the bench. When court resumed 30 minutes later, Judge Klein looked like he'd aged 5 years. His hands were shaking as he called the session back to order. The train station footage was clear and damning. It showed Malik boarding the 6:15 p.m. northbound train, 12 minutes before the alleged crime occurred, 8 minutes before Mrs. Henderson claimed to see him running from the scene. But Klein wasn't ready to give up. The court will review this new evidence, he said stiffly, but this does not automatically invalidate the jury's verdict. There may be reasonable explanations. Like what? Malik interrupted. Mr. Davis, you will not speak out of turn in my courtroom. Then when do I get to speak? After you send me to prison for 25 years? The gallery was packed now. Word had spread on social media. Local news crews were setting up outside. The hashtag Malik Davis was trending on Twitter. Morrison, the public defender, finally found her voice. Your Honor, I move for immediate dismissal of all charges. The evidence clearly shows. The court will make that determination, Klein snapped. Prosecutor Walsh was in full damage control mode.
Your Honor, while this new evidence raises questions about timing, it doesn't necessarily prove innocence. The defendant could have what? Malik demanded. Teleported? Cloned myself? Please explain to the court how I managed to be on a train and committing a burglary at the same time. Walsh fumbled through her files. The witness testimony still stands. Mrs. Henderson was very clear about what she saw. Mrs. Henderson saw someone in the dark with glaucoma, Malik shot back. She couldn't see her own hand in front of her face at that time of night. Klein tried to regain control. Mr. Davis, these outbursts are highly inappropriate. You know what's inappropriate? Malik's voice rose. Rigging a trial because you didn't like my father, allowing false testimony, ignoring exculpatory evidence. That's what's inappropriate. He turned to face the packed courtroom. How many other kids have sat in this same spot, convicted on lies and bad evidence? How many didn't have a father who taught them how to read case files? How many didn't have mothers who could afford to take time off work to fight for them? Mrs. Rodriguez, the former juror, stood up again. Your Honor, I demand to know why we weren't shown the train station footage during trial. Why weren't we told about the officer's radio logs? We convicted an innocent man because we weren't given all the facts. Other jurors in the gallery began nodding and murmuring agreement. Klein was losing control of his courtroom. The defense had access to all evidence. No, we didn't, Morrison finally spoke up, surprising everyone, including herself. The prosecution never disclosed the radio logs. They never mentioned the camera malfunction. They never told us about Mrs. Henderson's medical records. She was shaking, but her voice grew stronger. Your Honor, I've been practicing law for 15 years, and I've never seen evidence withheld so systematically. This isn't just about one case. This is about That's enough, Klein roared. But it wasn't enough for Malik. You want to know the real crime here? He said, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom. It's not that you tried to convict me for something I didn't do. It's that you do this every day. To kids who don't know their rights, to families who can't afford real lawyers, to people who think the system is supposed to protect them. He looked directly at Klein. My father used to say that justice was blind, but you're not blind, Judge Klein. You see exactly what you're doing. You see the color of my skin. You see my father's name. You see a chance for revenge. The courtroom was completely silent, except for the scratch of reporters' pens and the soft click of camera phones. The defense didn't miss this evidence, Malik continued. The court didn't care about this evidence. The court wanted a conviction, not the truth. Klein's face was purple with rage. Mr. Davis, I am holding you in contempt. Hold me in contempt for speaking the truth? Go ahead, add it to the list of false charges. A reporter in the back row called out. Judge Klein, do you have any comments on these allegations of prosecutorial misconduct? Klein's head snapped toward the gallery. This court does not recognize questions from the media. But the damage was done. The story was already writing itself. Young black man exposes corruption in local court. Judge's personal vendetta leads to wrongful conviction. System on trial as teen fights for freedom. Malik wasn't done. Your Honor, I have one question for you. Klein glared at him but said nothing. If you're so certain I'm guilty, why are you afraid of the evidence? The question hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Klein sat in silence for a full minute, staring at Malik with undisguised hatred. Finally, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Court is in recess for 1 hour. As he left the bench, the courtroom exploded into chaos. Reporters rushed for the doors. Supporters in the gallery cheered. Mrs. Davis was crying. But Malik just stood there, still in his chains, watching Klein retreat. He had won this battle, but the war was far from over. When court reconvened, everything had changed. The gallery was now packed with supporters, legal observers, and reporters from 3 different news stations. The story had gone viral. Hashtag Justice for Malik was trending nationally. Judge Klein returned to the bench looking defeated. District Attorney Margaret Walsh, Rebecca's boss, had arrived during the recess and was huddled with the prosecution team, clearly unhappy. Klein cleared his throat. After reviewing the evidence presented today, the court has concerns about the integrity of the original trial. He paused, clearly struggling with each word.
The prosecution has requested additional time to review the new evidence and determine the appropriate course of action. DA Margaret Walsh stood up. Your Honor, the people move to dismiss all charges against the defendant with prejudice.
The courtroom erupted. Malik's knees almost buckled. Morrison grabbed his arm to steady him. But Klein wasn't ready to let it end so simply. The court will take this motion under advisement. No! Malik's voice cut through the noise. No more delays. No more games. He stepped forward, chains clinking. Your Honor, you just heard the prosecution ask to dismiss all charges. The evidence shows I'm innocent. The witnesses lied. The timeline doesn't work. What exactly are you taking under advisement? Klein's jaw tightened. Mr. Davis, the court has procedures. The court had procedures during my trial, too. Procedures like disclosing evidence to the defense. Procedures like avoiding conflicts of interest. How did those procedures work out? Malik looked around the packed courtroom. Everyone in this room knows I'm innocent. The question is whether this court cares more about being right or looking right. He paused, then asked the question that would define everything. How many other kids never got the chance to speak? How many sat in that chair and took their sentence because they didn't know how to fight back? How many are sitting in prison right now because this court values ego over evidence? The silence was deafening. Klein stared at Malik for what felt like hours. The weight of 23 years on the bench, hundreds of cases, thousands of sentences, all of it seemed to press down on him in that moment. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke. The motion to dismiss is granted. All charges against the defendant are dropped. Case dismissed. The courtroom exploded in cheers and applause, but Malik didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just stood there, numb. The bailiff removed his chains. Morrison was crying. His mother was pushing through the crowd to reach him. Reporters shouted questions. Malik, how does it feel to be free? Will you sue the city? What's your message to other young people facing similar situations? Malik ignored them all and walked straight to Judge Klein, who was still sitting on the bench, looking shell-shocked. Your Honor, Malik said quietly, so only Klein could hear. This isn't about me anymore. It's about the next kid who sits in that chair, and the one after that, and the one after that. Klein looked at him, but said nothing. My father taught me that the law is only as good as the people who enforce it. Today, you had a choice. I hope you remember this feeling the next time you have to make that choice. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had grown to over 100 people. Local activists, students from Malik's high school, neighbors from his block, all celebrating his freedom. His mother hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. Your father would be so proud. But Malik felt hollow. Not because he wasn't happy to be free, he was, but because freedom shouldn't have been something he had to fight for in the first place. A reporter shoved a microphone in his face. Malik, you just exposed massive corruption in the local court system. How do you feel about being a hero? Malik looked at the camera, at all the faces staring at him expectantly. I'm not a hero, he said. Heroes save people. I just saved myself. He paused, thinking about all the kids who never got this chance. This isn't justice. This is survival with a microphone. 6 months later, Judge Harold Klein announced his early retirement. The district attorney's office implemented new evidence disclosure protocols. 3 convictions from Klein's court were overturned on appeal. But none of that brings back the years lost by people who didn't have Malik's knowledge, his family's support, or his father's training. Malik enrolled at Howard University, his father's alma mater, majoring in criminal justice. He speaks at high schools now, teaching kids their rights, showing them how to spot lies in the system. His mother still teaches third grade. She keeps a picture of the courthouse on her desk, not to celebrate their victory, but to remember how close they came to losing everything. The security guard at TechFix still talks about the day his quiet intern took on the whole court system and won. That boy's got fire, he tells customers. Fire and truth, dangerous combination. But Malik knows the truth about what really happened in that courtroom. He didn't beat the system, he beat one courtroom. That's not the same thing. The system is still there, grinding away, processing kids who look like him, sound like him, come from neighborhoods like his. Most of them don't have fathers who are lawyers. Most of them don't know how to read case files or spot prosecutorial misconduct. Some never get a second look at the timestamp. Some never have mothers who can afford to take time off work to fight.
And some judges never get held accountable for the lies they allow, the evidence they ignore, the lives they destroy. Malik walks free, but thousands don't. Sometimes the system blinks, but what happens to the ones who never got that moment?